Hi everybody, welcome to my tutorial in which we're developing a reactive web application in Clojure using OM, Chestnut, Clojure script, all that stuff. And in this video we're going to create our own OM component, a simple one, to make the concepts or the basic concepts clear that are the basis of the OM ecosystem, if you will. Okay, so let's get started. We're just starting off with the same project that we left behind last time. So with this one you can get it from GitHub if you want to. We're not going to cover any Google App Engine stuff in this video. We're just doing the OM reactive things, so don't worry about Google App Engine in this video. Yeah, the first thing we're going to do is adjust our index.html file, make it a bit simpler, just like this. Then we're going to our Clojure script source, core CLJS, which is the only place where we're going to code this time, because we don't cover any server communication today. Okay, so let's get rid of all of it. Okay, first thing, we're going to introduce some new state here into our app state. Let's call it toggle state, and it consists itself of another map with a checked key that's starting off with a false value. So the idea is to create a reactive component that is effectively a checkbox, like you're used to it from HTML, and it's reactive in the way that you can bind it to some part of the app state. So when that state gets changed, then the checkbox should update itself automatically. So we're going to put two checkboxes into our page, and when we click one, then the other one should switch to the same value on the same state automatically, which is basically what you're expecting from a reactive web application. Yeah, so I'm trying to keep it simple, just a checkbox or two checkboxes, and when you click one, the other one gets changed as well, and the other way around too. Okay, so let's start with stuff. We're starting off with our usual OM root call, and this time we're passing it an app view that we have to create in a minute. We're passing it the app state as the state, and we're passing it some definition of or instructions of where to inject this view into our HTML file. So that's element by ID on the JS document object, and the ID is toggle. So that's referencing this div here. So our stuff is going to get inserted or injected into this div. Okay, now we have to create the app view. For that we're creating simply a function app view that gets passed the app state and the owner. Well, we're binding the app state to the name app here, the symbol app. It's basically that this stuff here, what we're defining here, it gets passed into the view. So effectively we're going to have a reference to the app state in this symbol. Okay, and now we have to return a OM component. That's why we're reifying a protocol namely the iRender protocol. For that we have to implement just one function called render. We're not interested in that argument that gets passed, and we're simply building another view that will contain our checkboxes. So usually you will have, or in a real world application, you will have one app view that builds the entire structure of the website, and we'll have several sub-views that get in turn built by the global app view, or the root app view. Okay, so we are going to build a view called toggle view, which we'll have to create as well in a second, and we're passing it, and now I have to explain, we're passing it not the entire state, and not the entire app state, but just a subset of it. So that's what you call a cursor in OM. The reason why you don't pass the entire app state is whenever the app state changes in any kinds of, or in any place, then all the OM components get notified of the update, and they are doing their stuff that they have to do for any update. And in order to reduce the overhead, or in order to only call the components that are really affected by a change, you're passing this sub-state, or the sub-state. By saying toggle state app here, I'm telling the toggle view component that it should not get updated, for example, when this text changes. It should only get updated when contents, or when the toggle state changes here. Okay, I hope that's getting clear. Now we're defining the toggle view component. Once again, let's call it state this time. So what's going to be bound to this symbol is just this here, because we're telling it we're only interested in toggle state and not the entire app state. So, alright. Once again we have to return an OM component. Refy, iRender again. Render, not interested, into the argument. And now let's start off simple. We're creating a div. We are creating an input, which is of type checkbox, and which is not checked. And we have to tell it the text. Let's call it toggle 1. And we're just duplicating it because we want to see later on that the state gets updated automatically, or the checkbox gets updated automatically. Let's start off with different values for the checked state here. So when we're starting off our REPL, starting our application, we should start off, or we should see initially two checkboxes. The first one labeled toggle 1 and unchecked, and the second one labeled toggle 2, which should be checked. And just for visibility, making it more clear visibility wise, let's just insert a new line stuff here. There's our REPL. I'm going to connect my Emacs to it. Port such and such. There we are. Now we're starting off our application just by calling run, and that gets run, and we don't have, oh, that's my common mistake. I'm doing it all over and over. Of course, we have to qualify this. It's in the OM namespace here, the protocol name, and then it compiles. Okay, now let's see. There we are. Having two checkboxes, toggle 1, toggle 2, first one unchecked, second one checked. And we can't change it. That's because, well, I don't even know why. It's because it's hard-coded here, obviously. One thing we're missing is we need an onChange handler, because when we click this checkbox, we have to update our application state. So we're introducing the onClick event here, event handler, telling it transact, which is a function with which you can update the app state. It's similar to the swap function for atoms, for example. We're passing it the state, we're passing it the key that we're going to update, and we're passing it a function that returns the value that is the new value for this part, which is just simply not. So what this means is, on click, we're going to invoke transact, passing it the state, which is this here. We're telling it that we're updating the portion that's identified by this key, and we're just passing it the not function because we're just negating this value, the current value. So that function here gets called with the current value or the old value of the checked key, and the result of this function call is the new value. So not false is true and not true is false, so that's why it's just getting negated. Now let's see. I still can't click it. I don't know why, but okay, let's just go ahead and refactor this input box out, because we don't want to have this code here duplicated everywhere where we're going to use a checkbox. Instead, we want to create our own component that represents such a checkbox, and we're calling it checkbox view. Once again, the state, the owner, and in this case we need some more information. For example, the text that's going to be displayed beside the checkbox, and which keyword should be referenced here to access the checked value, because we don't want to hard code this. So that means we're going to destructure this thing, and we once again have to return a OM component. Okay, so now we just want to sorry. Okay, yeah, it's totally messed up. Once again, I made my usual mistake. Okay, checked is... Well, now we're really trying to access the state here. That means we have to call the key that got passed onto our state, which references this value. We have to replace this by the keyword and we have to replace this by the text. So can still not click it. Okay, because we don't have replaced it yet with the component that we just built. Okay, we have to call the build function, passing it the checkbox view and passing it the state. Oh well, and passing it the options here, text and key. You do that in the form of a map saying opts are text is toggle 1 and key is checked. So now we can click it. It's now bound to the to the actual app state. We can see it. Let's see. We can see it, for example, here. We can introduce a print here. Let's do it just for demonstration purposes, hard coded. So in our console, okay, it's just the other way around. Okay, so it's still the old value that we're seeing here because the transaction is still in play and running at that time when we're printing it, obviously. But you see that it switches. Great. Now let's undo this and let's replace, or we don't have to type it again. Let's copy paste this. Well, we want to call it toggle 2. Okay, so here we are, and there you are. That was it. So, what do we learn from this? What we learn from this is we don't even have to write any code that updates the visual state of the toggle. The fact that we are binding in this JS block here, we're binding the checked attribute of our UI component to something that is within the app state, tells that whenever the app state in this place gets updated, it needs to re-render the UI component. So that's really nice. It saves you writing boilerplate code over and over. Don't have to worry about this anymore. Just have to say, okay, this one is my attribute so and so is depends on this part of my app state, and then you're done. So great stuff. Is there anything else? I think that was it for today's tutorial. I hope you're seeing the value of this and how nice it is, how much power it gives you to write consistent UIs and consistent web applications. And you don't have to think about synchronization of app state or UI components, all that stuff. You're just doing your things here. Remember the main concepts that we introduced were the cursors, to tell a component that it only depends on this very part of an app state. Yeah, well, and defining views. Now let's consider this one here, our checkbox component. We can use this one anywhere in any application that we're going to build in the future. We're just building it telling it the options, and then we're done. So that is reusable code.